December 8th, 1994. Mexico City. The traffic is snarled, the smog is thick, and somewhere in the chaos, a man is stepping into his car for the very last time. He isn't a cartel boss. He isn't a politician. He is a neurophysiologist, a man of science. But to the people watching him from the shadows, Dr. Jacobo Grinberg was the most dangerous scientist alive. Not because he built bombs, not because he was selling state secrets, but because he had built a bridge that wasn't supposed to exist, a bridge between the cold, hard logic of quantum physics and the terrifying impossibility of the supernatural. Just days before, he had told his daughter something strange. He said he had finally found it. The code, the mechanism, the scientific proof that reality as we know it is a lie. He was preparing to publish a theory that would rewrite the laws of physics and human consciousness. 2 days later, he was erased. No body, no crime scene, no goodbye. Just a man who looked too closely at the fabric of the universe and perhaps fell through. Welcome to the edge of the rabbit hole. When we talk about the matrix or simulation theory today, it's usually a meme, a thought experiment for tech billionaires in Silicon Valley. But in the 1980s, in the hallowed halls of the National Autonomous University of Mexico, one man wasn't treating it as a game. He was treating it as a biology problem. Dr. Grinberg wasn't a fringe lunatic posting on message boards. He was the Mexican Einstein. He ran a state-of-the-art laboratory. He published in respected, peer-reviewed journals. He hooked people up to EEGs and measured the electricity of the soul. He believed he had discovered something called the lattice, a holographic information field that connects every single human mind on this planet. He believed that with enough focus, you could hack that field. You could change matter. You could defy gravity. You could communicate without speaking. And the terrifying part? He had the data to back it up. Before we open his files, I have to ask you something. A question that lies at the heart of Grinberg's disappearance. Question: if science proved tomorrow that reality is just a hologram controlled by your mind, would you be free or terrified? Answer free or terrified in the comments below. Because what we are about to discuss isn't just history. It is a manual for a reality you were never meant to see. Subscribe to Hack the Lattice. Let's investigate. To understand how a man of science vanishes into thin air, you have to understand where he went when he was still on the ground. You have to follow him out of the pristine, fluorescent-lit laboratories of the National Autonomous University of Mexico. You have to follow him away from the peer reviews, the grant applications, and the safe, predictable laws of physics. You have to follow Jacobo Grinberg into the dark. It is the late 1970s. Grinberg is hearing whispers. Rumors of a woman in Mexico City, a woman who defies every rule of biology and medicine. Her name is Barbara Guerrero, but the streets know her simply as Pachita. She is not a doctor. She has no degree. She cannot read an MRI. She operates out of a dimly lit room in a crumbling house smelling of iodine, cheap incense, and copper. For a scientist like Grinberg, this should have been a sideshow, a fraud, a parlor trick designed to swindle the desperate and the dying. He goes there, notebook in hand, armed with the arrogance of the scientific method. He goes there to debunk a charlatan. He goes there to find the wires, the mirrors, the hidden pouches of chicken blood. But what he finds breaks him. Imagine the scene. It's a Friday night. The waiting room is packed. The air is heavy, thick with the humidity of bodies and the electric tension of belief. Grinberg enters the operating room. It is almost pitch black, lit only by the flickering light of candles. He sees her. Pachita. She is a small, elderly woman. She looks like a grandmother, not a surgeon. And in her hand, she holds the instrument of her trade. It is not a scalpel. It is not a laser. It is a rusty hunting knife, a cuchillo de monte, the kind of knife you use to skin a rabbit in the dirt. It has a dull edge. It hasn't been sterilized. In any modern hospital, bringing that object near an open wound would be malpractice. It would be a death sentence. Grinberg watches as a patient lies down on the cot, a man with a diseased lung or a tumor in the stomach. The diagnosis doesn't matter because the treatment is always the same terrifying ritual. Pachita enters a trance. She claims the spirit of Cuauhtémoc, the last Aztec emperor, takes possession of her body. Her voice changes, her posture changes. The grandmother is gone. The warrior is here. Grinberg moves closer. He is standing inches away. He is watching her hands. He is looking for the sleight of hand. He is waiting for the trick. But there is no trick. Without hesitation, she plunges the rusty knife into the patient's abdomen. Grinberg flinches. He expects a scream. He expects shock. But the patient remains calm. Then the blood comes. It is real blood. Grinberg can smell it. He can see the viscosity. It flows over Pachita's hands, dark and rich. She widens the incision, not with retractors, but with her bare, unwashed fingers. She reaches inside the human body. This is the moment where science says, stop. This is the moment where infection should set in. This is the moment where the body should go into catastrophic shock. But Grinberg watches as she pulls something out. A mass of tissue, a tumor, a necrotic organ. She throws it into a bucket. It lands with a wet, heavy thud. And then comes the part that Grinberg could never explain to his colleagues at the university. Pachita places her hands over the gaping wound. She doesn't stitch it. She doesn't cauterize it. She simply holds it. She mutters into the darkness. She squeezes the flesh together. And when she pulls her hands away, the wound is gone. Not healed. Gone. There is no scar. There is no scab. The skin is smooth, unbroken, as if the knife had never entered, as if the last 10 minutes of violence had been deleted from the timeline of the universe. Grinberg is stunned. He checks the patient. The patient stands up, groggy but painless, and walks out. Grinberg doesn't run away. He returns. Day after day, month after month, he becomes obsessed. He isn't just a spectator anymore, he becomes an assistant. He stands beside the shaman, handing her the cotton, handing her the rusty knife. He collects the tissue she removes. He takes it back to his lab. He puts it under a microscope. He expects to find chicken liver. He expects to find animal entrails. He finds human tissue, pathological human tissue, cancerous cells, real tumors. The fraud hypothesis is dead. The hallucination hypothesis is dead. Grinberg is left with a conclusion that is terrifying to a materialist. The physical world is not solid. It is not fixed. He realizes that Pachita isn't doing surgery, not in the way we understand it. She isn't manipulating biology. She is manipulating reality itself. This is where the theory of Syntergy begins to take shape in his mind. Grinberg starts to see the world differently. He looks at the walls of the room, the rusty knife, the blood, the patient. He realizes they are all just information. They are data points in a vast, complex field. He calls this field the lattice. To you and me, the chair you are sitting on is solid. You can knock on it. It hurts your hand. But Grinberg realized that to a consciousness operating at a higher frequency, like Pachita in her trance, the chair is just a suggestion. The skin is just a suggestion. The lattice is the matrix of information that underlies all of space-time. It contains the code for everything that exists. Most of us are locked out of the system. We are read-only users. We experience reality, but we cannot change the code. We accept that skin breaks when cut. We accept that tumors grow. We accept the laws of cause and effect. But Pachita, she had administrator access. She had found a way to bypass the user interface of the physical world and access the source code. When she plunged that knife into a body, she wasn't cutting atoms. She was highlighting a section of code and hitting delete. When she closed the wound, she was copy-pasting healthy tissue data from the lattice back into the physical projection. Grinberg wrote about this extensively. He detailed the smell of the ozone that would fill the room when she worked, the smell of high-energy ionization. He noted that the laws of thermodynamics seemed to bend around her. He realized that the brain is not a creator of consciousness, but a receiver, like a radio. And if you could tune that radio to the right frequency, the frequency of the lattice itself, you could interact with the hologram. You could manifest matter. You could heal the incurable. This was the bridge he was building. He wanted to take the magic of the shaman and decode it into the physics of the scientist. He wanted to teach us all how to be Pachita. He wasn't trying to prove magic existed. He was trying to prove that magic was just physics we didn't understand yet. But there is a danger in peeking behind the curtain. When you start telling people that their reality is a simulation, that their physical limitations are an illusion, that the government, the economy, and the social order are just fragile constructs floating in a holographic field, you become a problem. Pachita died in 1979. She took her secrets to the grave. But she left one thing behind. Jacobo Grinberg. He had seen the code. He had touched the glitch in the matrix, and he was determined to write the manual for the rest of us. But as he would soon find out, the system has an immune response, and when you try to hack the lattice, sometimes the lattice hacks you back. The knife was rusty, the room was dark, the miracles were undeniable. But Jacobo Grinberg was not a shaman. He was a scientist, and for a scientist, witnessing a miracle is not enough. You have to measure it. You have to replicate it. You have to break it down into data. So he left the incense-filled rooms of the healers and returned to the sterile, fluorescent-lit halls of the National Autonomous University of Mexico. He traded the Cuchillo de Monte for the electroencephalogram, EEG. He had a radical hypothesis. If Pachita could manipulate reality, it meant reality wasn't what we thought it was. It meant that space isn't empty. It meant that our brains aren't isolated hard drives locked inside our skulls. This is where he developed his magnum opus, the theory of Syntergy. The word itself is a fusion, synthesis, and energy. Grinberg proposed that the universe is filled with a field of information of colossal complexity. He called it the lattice. Think of the lattice like the coding of a video game. It's everywhere. It contains the data for every photon, every electron, every thought, and every moment in time. But it's invisible to us. Why? Because our brains are not designed to see the code. They are designed to render the graphics. According to Grinberg, the human brain interacts with this lattice like a decoder ring. We take the infinite chaos of the lattice, filter it, and collapse it into the solid, manageable reality you see around you right now. The chair, the screen, the wall, these are just the user interface your brain creates so you can navigate the data. But here is the catch. If we all create our own reality, why do we all see the same chair? Grinberg argued that we possess a neuronal field. Our brains emit a field of energy that interacts with the lattice, and because we are all humans running similar hardware, we all agree on the same illusion. We collectively vote on reality. But Grinberg needed proof. He needed to prove that human brains were inextricably linked, connected via this invisible lattice, even without speaking, seeing, or touching each other. He needed to prove telepathy, not as a magic trick, but as a biological fact. So, in the heart of his laboratory, he designed an experiment that would make the scientific community tremble. It was an application of the famous Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen EPR paradox, quantum entanglement, but applied to biological systems. The setup was rigorous. He took pairs of people, not strangers. He took people with a deep emotional bond, couples, best friends, parent and child. He asked them to sit together in silence and meditate, to synchronize their breathing, to feel each other's presence until their brain waves began to align, entangling their consciousness. Then he separated them. Person A was placed in a soundproof, electromagnetic shielded room, a Faraday cage. No radio waves could get in, no cell signals, no Wi-Fi, nothing. They were electrically isolated from the universe. Person B was placed in a completely different room, also shielded. Grinberg hooked both of them up to EEGs to monitor their brain activity in real time. Here is what happened. Person A, the sender, was exposed to a stimulus. A sudden flash of bright light in their eyes, or a loud sound. Naturally, their brain reacted instantly. The EEG showed a sharp spike and evoked potential, a clear, measurable electrical reaction to the light. Person B, the receiver, was sitting in the dark in silence in a metal box rooms away. They saw no light. They heard no sound. They had no idea what was happening to Person A. But at the exact millisecond that Person A saw the light, Person B's brain reacted. The EEG of Person B showed a spike. It wasn't as large as Person A's, but it was there, distinct, statistically significant, identical in shape to the sender's reaction. Grinberg called this the transferred potential. There was no physical signal, no wire, no sound wave. The only explanation was that their brains were not two separate entities. They were two terminals accessing the same mainframe. Through the meditation, they had hacked the lattice. They had created a shared hyperfield. When the lattice changed for one, it changed for the other. Distance was irrelevant. Separation was an illusion. Grinberg ran this experiment over and over. He published the results in Physics Essays, a prestigious journal. This wasn't a blog post. This was peer-reviewed science claiming that the human mind is non-local. The implications were staggering. If Grinberg was right, then individuality is a lie. We are not islands. We are all part of a single continuous consciousness. The lattice connects us all. If you hurt someone else, you are biologically hurting yourself. If you heal yourself, you ripple healing out into the collective. But more dangerously, if you understand the physics of the lattice, you can do what Pachita did. You can rewrite the code. Grinberg realized that high-level consciousness, like that of a shaman or a master meditator, creates a high Syntergy field, a field so coherent, so powerful, that it overrides the default programming of the lattice. That's how Pachita could materialize organs. She wasn't breaking the laws of physics, she was just an admin user overriding the read-only restrictions of the common man. By 1994, Grinberg was no longer just observing. He was mapping the path. He was writing the manual on how to wake up from the simulation. He told his friends he was working on a new technology, a machine that could facilitate this interaction, a way to bypass years of meditation and plug directly into the lattice. He was blurring the line between biology and divinity. And as history shows us, whenever a scientist gets close to giving godlike power to the common man, the system intervenes. Grinberg had proven the connection. He had found the matrix. He had the data. And that made him the most vulnerable man on Earth. Because if we are all connected, who is watching the connection? The year is 1994. In Mexico, the air is already thick with blood. It is a cursed year. The Zapatista uprising has just begun. The presidential candidate, Luis Donaldo Colosio, has been assassinated on live television. The peso is collapsing. The country is in freefall. It is the perfect storm, the perfect smokescreen. If you wanted to make a man disappear, 1994 was the year to do it. By December, Jacobo Grinberg is at the height of his powers. But he is also a man on the edge. Those close to him say he was anxious. He was looking over his shoulder. He told his daughter, Estucia, that he felt he was being watched. He told his stepbrothers that something was going to happen. He was working on a new book, a manuscript that he claimed would be the final piece of the puzzle, the practical application of the Syntergy theory, not just the why, but the how. On December 8, 1994, Jacobo Grinberg is scheduled to celebrate his 48th birthday. His family is waiting. The cake is ready. The gifts are wrapped. Jacobo never shows up. At first, the family isn't panicked. Jacobo is eccentric. He is a scientist who gets lost in his work. He is a traveler who disappears into the mountains to meditate with shamans. But then, the days turn into weeks. The person who should be panic-stricken is his wife, Teresa Mendoza. But Teresa is calm. Too calm. When the family calls, she tells them a story. She says Jacobo went on an impromptu retreat. She says he went to Campeche. She says he went to Nepal. She changes the story every time. She tells them not to worry, that he just needs space. But the family knows Jacobo. He would never miss his birthday. He would never leave his daughter without a word. On December 12th, witnesses claim to see him one last time. A gas station, a fleeting glimpse, and then total silence. It takes 5 months for the police to finally enter his home. 5 months. In a missing persons case, the first 48 hours are critical. 5 months is an eternity. It is a lifetime. When the investigators finally step inside his house, they find a scene that chills the blood. There is no struggle. There is no blood. The house is orderly. But his computer is missing. His hard drives are gone. His notes, his journals, the manuscript for the Theory of Syntergy, all erased. It wasn't a robbery. Thieves take the TV. Thieves take the jewelry. They don't steal research papers on quantum consciousness. They don't steal the life's work of a neurophysiologist. This was a surgical strike. The investigation turns its eyes to Teresa Mendoza. And this is where the story shifts from a missing person case to a spy thriller. Teresa was Jacobo's third wife. She wasn't a scientist. She wasn't an intellectual. And interestingly, no one seemed to know much about her past. When the police pressure her, she makes a mistake. She claims Jacobo took a flight to Boulder, Colorado to give a lecture at the university. Investigators check the flight manifests. There is no record of Jacobo Grinberg boarding a plane. There is no record of him landing in the U.S. But then the investigators dig into Teresa. They find that she has been making calls, strange calls to the United States. And then, just as the heat turns up, just as the questions become too pointed, Teresa Mendoza vanishes. Poof. She doesn't leave a trail. She doesn't say goodbye. She disappears just as completely as her husband. This leaves us with the lead investigator, Commander Clemente. He is an honest cop in a corrupt system. He starts pulling threads. He starts finding connections that make his superiors nervous. According to those close to the case, Clemente finds evidence linking Teresa to U.S. intelligence. He finds inconsistencies that point not to a kidnapping by a cartel, but to an extraction by a government. He tells the family, "I have found something big. I am going to blow this wide open." The next day, Commander Clemente is fired. The investigation is shut down. The files are buried. So what happened to Jacobo Grinberg? There are two main theories, and both are terrifying. Theory number 1, the weaponization of consciousness. We know that during the Cold War, the CIA ran Project Stargate. They spent millions trying to use psychic spies to view targets remotely. They knew what Grinberg knew. The mind is not local. But by 1994, the U.S. government claimed they had shut down these programs. They said they were useless. But imagine you are an intelligence agency. You see a man in Mexico who has scientifically proven that the human mind can influence matter. A man who has proven that brains can communicate without technology. A man who is writing a manual on how to hack the fabric of reality. Do you let him publish that book? Do you let him give that power to the public? Or do you take him? Declassified documents later revealed that the CIA was keeping tabs on Grinberg. He was a person of interest. He had been invited to conferences in the U.S. that were fronts for intelligence gathering. The theory is simple. Grinberg didn't die. He was recruited, forcefully. He was taken to a black site, perhaps in Boulder, perhaps elsewhere, to continue his research in the dark, to build weapons of psychological warfare that we can't even comprehend. But then, there is theory number 2. the forbidden theory. The theory that Jacobo Grinberg didn't fly to Colorado. He didn't get in a car. He didn't get on a plane. The theory is that he went in. Grinberg had spent years studying the high Syntergy state. He wrote that if a consciousness becomes perfectly coherent, if it vibrates at the exact frequency of the lattice, it ceases to be separate from it. He wrote about a state of pure unity. Some of his followers believed that under the extreme pressure of 1994, facing the threats, facing the danger, Grinberg attempted the ultimate experiment. He tried to merge fully with the lattice. He didn't just hack the simulation, he exited the server. It sounds insane. It sounds impossible. But remember who we are talking about. A man who watched a shaman reach into a body with a dirty knife and pull out a tumor without leaving a scar. A man who proved telepathy in a Faraday cage. If anyone could figure out how to leave this physical plane without dying, it was him. But whether he was taken by men in black suits, or whether he ascended into the code of the universe, the result is the same. The man is gone. The manuscript is gone. The secrets are gone. Or are they? Because recently, something strange has started happening. His books, which were out of print for decades, are suddenly reappearing. The internet is digging up his old lectures. The algorithm is pushing his name. It feels like a signal. It feels like a dead man's switch has been tripped. The man vanished in 1994. But his ideas? You can't kill an idea. You can only delay it. And maybe, just maybe, the delay is over. 30 years. That is how long it has been since Dr. Jacobo Grinberg stepped into the smog of Mexico City and dissolved into the ether. In the world of missing persons, 30 years is usually the end of the line. The case files turn yellow. The leads dry up. The public forgets. The world moves on. But with Grinberg, the opposite is happening. For decades, his books were impossible to find. They were ghosts. If you found a copy of The Theory of Syntergy in a used bookstore in Mexico City, it was like finding a relic. People were selling photocopies of photocopies for hundreds of dollars on the black market. Why? Because you can wipe a hard drive, you can burn a manuscript, you can intimidate a family, but you cannot kill a frequency once it has been broadcast. Today, Grinberg is more alive than he was in 1994. A new generation is discovering his work, not through academic journals, but through the very digital lattice he predicted. His ideas on the holographic universe, which sounded like madness in the 90s, are now the leading edge of quantum physics and consciousness studies. Nobel Prize winners are now debating if reality is a simulation. Tech billionaires are pouring fortunes into brain-computer interfaces. The world is finally building the bridge that Grinberg finished 3 decades ago. He was the canary in the coal mine. He was the first man to look at the source code and realize that the user interface was riggable. And this brings us back to the question we asked at the start. Was he taken? Was he murdered? Or did he achieve the impossible? If you look at this story through the lens of a crime drama, it is a tragedy. A brilliant mind silenced by corruption, jealousy, or the CIA. A wife who knew too much. A detective who got too close. A body that was never found. But if you look at it through the lens of the Syntergy theory, the ending changes. Grinberg taught that death is a misunderstanding of physics. He taught that consciousness is not generated by the brain, but localized by it. He believed that if you could expand your consciousness enough, if you could match the frequency of the lattice perfectly, the physical body becomes redundant. Maybe the reason they never found a body is because there wasn't one left to find. Maybe he didn't escape to somewhere. Maybe he escaped from everything. We may never know the truth about December 8, 1994. The file remains open. The mystery remains unsolved. But every time you question the nature of your reality, every time you have a feeling that someone is calling you just before the phone rings, every time you feel that strange sense of déjà vu, like the code of the world is glitching around you, you are touching the lattice. You are proving him right. Dr. Grinberg might be gone from this version of the simulation, But his final experiment isn't over. We are the experiment. If you made it this far, you are now part of the anomaly. The algorithm brought you here for a reason. If you believe reality is more than what they tell us, hit that like button. It tells the system we are watching. And if you want to go deeper into the files that they tried to burn, make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on. We are just getting started. Until next time, stay awake.